not my intent, because not everybody is in a position to volunteer and be an advocate, but often it's a goal at some point to get to that point. There are so many other ways. We're a new organization in Washtenaw County. Some statistics, just so you know, every year we serve, there's about 500 abused and neglected kids every year here in our county. And at any given time, we have about 250, between 200 and 250 that are in active foster care here in Washtenaw County. When we started, you know, there were only a few advocates. The program had been through some ringers, and now it's really on solid ground. The county is really committed to it. We have 2 full-time supervisors on board that we can commit to long-term. And we're growing the program in increments. We're careful not to grow it too quickly because we want to have these supervisors there long-term. And every supervisor we get, we are then allowed to bring on about 30 more advocates. And that means serving at least 30 more children, if not 40 or 50. So, Michael?
Can you talk a little bit about the county's role in...
We have a really unique situation in how we work together. It's a really wonderful example of actually public and private sector working together, because Washtenaw County what's the name for it? County Services, the Juvenile Trial Court. Pardon?
CAC, Child Advocacy?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Part of the whole services. We work, so they provide offices, they do a lot of the funding for the program. They're very committed to the program. And then our primary role as Friends of CASA is to do recruitment of volunteers, to train volunteers, and funding for the program long term, so that the county knows that they have long-term funding for the program, because their budgets go up and down, and they'll support it as much as they can, but we're there to provide consistency and some competency, I would say, to the program.
Do you want to introduce Donna at this point?
I would love to introduce Donna. Thank you. Donna is our executive director. This is Donna Hudson. This has been a big step for our organization to hire an executive director. She brings great experience in growing an organization from our size kind of to the next size, and is full of great ideas and was hugely helpful in getting this organized, so thank you. And while I'm on thank yous, I can't thank Betsy and Kim enough for doing this and hosting this event. It was very generous of both of you, and really the idea that I just showed up. This is a beautiful setup. I think that's a beautiful job. So thank you. Oh, and those are for you. So I'm gonna just finish with the other. I want to touch on the other ways that you can support the program. Clearly, our role as Friends of CASA is in recruiting, training, and funding of the program. We have several fundraisers coming up over the course of the year that both we would love for you to attend, invite friends, or we keep things pretty casual because we're in a friend-raising capacity right now, really trying to build awareness and educate people on the program. So if there are ways that you feel you can contribute at any of the events, last year we pulled off, I think, a great fun event, but with about 5 people pulling the whole thing together. We can't do that again. So we have lists over here. If you're interested in being on a committee to help on one of these events, or volunteer in any capacity, you can fill out one of those forms. Donna will talk to you about the many different ways that you can volunteer that are not direct necessarily with the children. And of course, funding. Right now, funding for expansion is our biggest challenge and our biggest goal. Some numbers for you so that you can get a feel for what it takes to support this program. Each one of these supervisor roles is a $30,000 to $40,000 position per year that we need to fund. My goal, and I think it's a completely reasonable goal for this county, is that we support all 250 kids that are in the system here. There's no reason that 250 children can't each have an advocate here in Washtenaw County. In other counties, the numbers are gigantic and outrageous and daunting. To me, when I learned that there were 250 kids, I actually got excited. I'm like, oh, this is doable. We can do this. We can serve every child. 40,000, about $800, $850 to serve a child per year. That's the cost of the supervisor role, the county expenses, our expenses, all kind of wrapped up. That's a national figure that they've come up with. So that just gives you a perspective on what it costs for us to run an advocate per child per year.
How many do you have right now?
Right now we have 2 supervisor roles. We have 52 trained volunteers. For us, hitting that 50 mark was really a big goal, and we've made it, and that means we can actually serve, many of the groups serve sibling sets, not just individuals. So I think we're probably serving approximately 80 out of 250 children in the county. So we're getting out there. The numbers are getting bigger. And
I have a question. Do you work in tandem with public schools, with the kids? Like how?
Not us directly, not our organization.
As an advocate, I mean, do you have?
As an advocate, absolutely. You have a relationship. You have complete access to all of those the relationships in that child's life. So their teachers, their doctors, their lawyers, their social worker. Their cases are incredibly private. Those files, very few, not even the parents are allowed to see those files because the parents are part of those files. You as an advocate have complete access to everything going on in that child's life. That's why that role in you are so important. You read that thing from front to back, and you're in there meeting with the teachers. You're in there, you're making the phone calls, making sure they're getting speech therapy, that the reading intervention program they're signed up for. If these are and that's where an advocate comes into play, because these kids jump schools. They get moved from foster home to foster home, so they move schools, and you got to get them back enrolled. Did they see their counselor last week? If they're in high school, are they meeting with counselors? Are they even thinking about, is anything thinking about their future? Helping, so yes, you have access. I thought you might do, we as an organization, work with schools that identify children. We don't do any of that, but we, as an advocate, absolutely.
Feel like you can feel it all the pieces.
Well, as a mom, I mean, this is why a lot of the grandparents are so great at this role. And it's something to consider if you know retirees and people, because they've been through this. They've put kids through school. They know how to get services. They can make the phone calls and send the emails, and they can be really effective in impacting these kids' lives and getting them civil services. So think about people you know that might make great volunteers and ways that you might want to contribute. Yep.
You spoke of your meeting. Sounds like it's two-part. You get to know the child so you can advocate for them, and you know the family situation, kind of a mentoring, similar to Big Brother Big Sister.
Right.
But then the second part is the legal part when you go to court.
Right.
Can you speak a little, because I think that scares, when I learned about this 5 years ago, I'd miss every court date. How do I work into my schedule, my life, that all-important court date? You mentioned quarterly. Are there 4 court dates a year generally? Are you able to say, I'm available this week? Are you at the mercy of everyone else? Because once you put the time and dedicate yourself to this child, can you kind of make the schedule work for you?
I'm not going to, I don't want to paint too pretty of a picture of that, because the courts are the courts, and it's kind of like being called into court for jury duty. In some cases, you're at their disposal, and you have to make it work. Where you do still have an impact, let's say worst case scenario, you miss that deadline, it does not mean, excuse me, that you don't have the ability to still talk with the judge or have a conversation with the judge. Your written report is read before you even step into the court. That written report is really the tell-all, and it's where most of your time is going to be spent. And you keep a weekly log. You keep a log of all your conversations with teachers, schools, doctors, and that report is read. And because if you think about what happens in the actual court, often they're already prepared. Everybody's prepared and decisions are being made. So a lot of the prep work is done before you step foot into the court. So if worst case you missed it, it wouldn't really be, you're still having a huge impact.
And how often is in an annual, is there an average of, is it something?
There's, so 3 months, 6 months. I haven't, you know, because I haven't done the Ann Arbor, I don't want to speak too specifically. Julie, do you know how, I mean, it was quarterly, but here's the thing. I mean, I know in certain cases you have to have emergency hearings.
Right.
They happen. Situations change and emergency hearings happen. And that's where, again, you know, the email, the written report, you're still going to have impact on it even if you can't be there.